Well, we're finally getting around to this one, Sonic Lost World. Yeah, before I took my YouTube hiatus, I played this one on Steam, having never played the Wii U version. And it definitely was one of the more unique Sonic games I've played, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. So first off, this was a Nintendo exclusive until it would wind up on Steam years later, it being on the Wii U, and only having a reported 710,000 units sold as of 2014. It's safe to say this game was a bust. Plus, this game just doesn't feel very big time. Even with the new threat of the Deadly Six, something just feels very goofy about it. And I'm all for silly Sonic, but for a mainline entry in the series, and with no new entries on the way until Sonic Mania in 2017 following this game, this was quite a direction for the Sonic series to take. And Sonic was about to enter into what's known as a pretty dark period. Some people would say it begins before this, but I would say between this game and Sonic Mania was a Sonic blackout. There was just nothing happening in this series. It was going nowhere. We had Sonic Boom games that were also becoming busts. It just was a really bad, frustrating time to be a Sonic fan. So what happens in this game? Sonic and Tails find themselves in the Lost Hex world and need to stop the Deadly Six, who have rebelled against Eggman when Sonic destroys his mind-controlling horn. And the Deadly Six take over all his badniks and are siphoning energy from Sonic's world below. So, believe it or not, Tails and Sonic make a truce with Eggman to stop the Deadly Six, and well, that's an interesting concept, but somehow, again, it just doesn't feel monumental, and that's weird to me because it shouldn't, because it hasn't happened since Sonic Adventure 2 that they had to work together to defeat a greater evil. And that was a decade ago at this point, so you would think that this would feel very vital, like we were coming to a turning point in the Sonic series, but I don't know what it is, it just doesn't feel that way. And I can't shake the feeling that this is a meh story. It just needs something more, and it doesn't help that the team of baddies known as the Deadly Six are mostly complete morons, with the exception of the leader Zavik, who really doesn't feel very Sonic-y to me, and Master Zik, founder and the elder of the group. I mean, you know, he seems pretty wise, but everyone else is just a bunch of morons. My favorite is Zor, the overly stereotypical emo member of the group, who really has some hilarious dialogue. But overall, this team just doesn't do it for me as Sonic villains. It's funny how they'd avoid going back to someone like Fang for so long, but make characters like this that feel rather out of place. I just don't see these guys in a Sonic game or show. There's a certain aesthetic I have in mind when I think of Sonic characters, and many others have the same aesthetic in mind, I'm pretty sure, and they've grown accustomed to how they expect their Sonic characters to look, and this just isn't it. So the game graphically looks great, and I have to say that this is one of the game's strong suits. It's a very smooth and polished looking game with colorful levels, and it looks very stylish but very cartoony. This is probably the most cartoony Sonic has ever looked in a game, and it looks just like a cartoon. And you may be saying, well, of course you schmuck, Sonic is a cartoon, but it just feels less detailed looking and more simplistic than Sonic Generations, and definitely nowhere near the level of detail as Sonic Colors or Unleashed. This definitely was intentional, and it really stands out, and I like it, even if I don't think it really should have been continued from this point, and thankfully it wasn't. And this brings me to the point that many have made with this game. It's kind of Mario-y, where the game is colorful and bold looking, but not exactly heavy on the detail. Which brings me to my next point, the gameplay. Sonic has a run button, people! Why? Just like Mario, of course, Why was this necessary? All these years and suddenly it's time to hold down the button to make Sonic do the thing he always did just by moving? Dear Lord, I wonder if they even struggled with that decision. Whose idea was it after years and years of tradition? And we gotta make it like Mario because it's a Nintendo exclusive. So, of course, why not? Mario has a run button. Let's give Sonic a run button. I don't really get this. You know, Super Mario 64 didn't have a run button. Mario Sunshine didn't have a run button, so why all of a sudden are we incorporating run buttons with Sonic, where one of his big things is running? And we just did it by the momentum of holding down the directional pad or stick. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. The fact that they even did this is very confusing. Yes, it may make platforming a bit simpler and maybe a bit more exact, but I mean, it wasn't that much of a problem. You know, most of the time in platforming sections, Sonic would already be slowed down to begin with. Usually the environment would call for a certain type of momentum. So the fact that they're messing with that core game mechanic, and trust me, it is core. The fact that they're doing this here, it was really worrisome. And I think, at least to me, this is probably why a lot of people have a lot of contention when it involves Lost World. And here's the thing that really pisses me off about this. Sonic set himself apart from Mario for many years by being different, only sharing the honor of being one of the most popular video game characters and mascots of all time. Now his games are playing like Mario's? No, I'm sorry. Aside from them both being platformers at the core, they're like completely different style of games. Maybe not completely crazily different games, you know, but they really are quite different. That's the reason why Sega went with Sonic to combat Mario, because it was different, it was faster paced, and the fact that this game is slowing things down. And that's true. This game is pretty slow for a Sonic game. There are points where you can pick up speed, but even with the run button, Sonic at full momentum is pretty slow in this game. He's not too fast. We will come to a point where we talk about the few auto runner sections in this game, but really, it's not a lot, and we shouldn't have to count on auto runner stages to have Sonic moving at a decent speed. So let's talk about the level design and where you'll be using the run button. It's interesting that Sonic is exploring a world which allows him to defy gravity and rotate around platforms that would otherwise have him fall to his death in any other game or world. But this obscure navigation of defying gravity is very reminiscent of Mario Galaxy, and while some have taken offense to this, I think it's pretty interesting and fun, but these worlds just feel kind of small, and despite seeing the flip side of landscapes at times, there being the classic alternate pathways, it all feels a little too claustrophobic, and I'm not a big fan of there always being a bottomless pit beneath me most of the time. There's a lot of spare real estate in many of these levels, many of which have you up in the air, jumping from platform to platform in a very Mario-esque way. And the more I talk about it, I realize how much Mario influence this game took, and it's a bit too much. I think this game feels more Mario than Sonic. Actually, there's a lot of points in this game that make it feel very much like Super Mario 3D World. And I really shouldn't be thinking that much about Mario and playing a Sonic game other than him being a former rival mascot. Also, it's very interesting to note that the developers went on record saying they used Sonic Extreme, the infamous canceled Saturn game from back in the day, as inspiration, and I kind of really like that. But Sonic Extreme never looked good to me. It always looked like it was a game that was going to be very disorienting and nauseating because it just had a very weird perspective. Now, of course, things have changed, 3D has advanced, and I'm just not too crazy about the whole idea in general of very obscure landscapes for Sonic. I think it's just a bit too obscure, and I like things to be a bit more basic. I do like complex level design, maybe not as batshit crazy as Sonic CD, but I think that there is something to be said for taking Sonic level design in a different direction, but there's some core principles that are just not being utilized here where I feel comfortable. And of course, maybe people will say, Brad, get out of your comfort zone, but no, there's certain things that just don't make this feel very Sonic game-ish to me. And that's not a good thing. I should not be feeling like I'm not playing a Sonic game at times when I'm staring at the blue bastard right on my screen. I know this is a Sonic game, but it doesn't feel like a Sonic game because I'm holding down a fucking run button and the landscapes just don't feel natural to that of a Sonic game. And I get he's in the Lost World of Hex, but come on, the Lost World of Hex is not really that great when it comes to design. I don't want to be flipping around to different sides of a level. It's very confusing. And this game, it just, sometimes it gets a little too random at times. And I get that that's kind of the part of the zaniness they're trying to convey with the Lost Hex and the colorfulness of the Deadly Six, but sometimes it's just a bit too much, and sometimes it's greatly convoluted, like Frozen Factory Act 1. What the fuck is going on here? These tubes. I was lost for so long. This is a stage that like just doesn't make any sense. It's a big labyrinth, and it's too much. It's just a big fucking mess. This is a big fucking mess. Not all the stages are bad though. Like some things are really great. Some examples of great would be traversing these catacombs and avoiding these Beetlejuice-esque sandworms. And an example of not so great would be becoming a snowball on a frustratingly small, narrow track. Desert Ruin Zone may be home to some of my favorite levels in the game. I enjoy the Auto Runner stage, which is not deserty at all, strangely enough. This one feels more like an Auto Runner like in Sonic 06 than the ones in Sonic Colors, with obstacles aplenty, but way easier and less rage-inducing to say the least. So there's some nice stuff in here. They also have these pure rail grinding stages, and these are a nice challenge. They're kind of fun, and I really dig the music in them. They're not mind-blowing, but they're pretty good compared to some other stages. You know, I'd rather do this than be a snowball, for example. And I really love Silent Forest Zone Act 2 with the robot owl in the background that acts as a security system. That was definitely a highlight for me. It's a stealth-based level, which is a first time for a Sonic game. And I really enjoyed Zor of the Deadly Six taunting me throughout the stages as well. This is something that is done throughout all the zones as members of the Deadly Six who hurl insults and provide commentary throughout the levels.
Maybe all the enemies and death traps will finish Sonic, maybe they won't. Does it really matter in the cosmic scheme of things? We're all gonna die eventually.
Is there a PA system hooked up? How exactly is Sonic hearing this? How is he able to go through a stage? Do they have like really loud voices or something like that? Do they have some type of, otherworldly presence where they're able to communicate with Sonic telepathically? Is it being broadcast, or is Sonic only hearing this in his head? Because I don't know. It's a little bit unexplainable, to say the least. An interesting thing to note about the enemies in this game is there's a lot of badniks that we hadn't seen in a very long time, except for generations, of course. And that's classic badniks. You've got the Buzz Bombers, you've got Crab Meat, you've got the Caterkillers. We haven't seen these guys in a very long time. And it's great to see them back here. And it's very surprising when you think about it. We've been kind of stuck with the same type of robots from Eggman for a while, the more human-looking ones. So it's great to see ones that are modeled after animals like back in the old days. And I really like to see this type of design. I wish it was a little bit more consistent in the current games. They were forgotten about and they were brought back for Lost World, and I like that retro feel. these are definitely the signature enemies in my eyes for Sonic. Now, I like mixing in the human-like robots as well, but these classic badniks should have never been completely forgotten about. And I'm happy that Sonic Team decided to bring them back in this game. The most confusing change to the gameplay is the implementation of the focused homing attack, which changes something that wasn't broken to begin with and kind of overcomplicates it by letting you do the homing attack on multiple targets. If you're further enough away, if you're up close to an enemy, you'll perform a more powerful homing attack. And it's all having to do with these crosshairs. The more crosshairs that appear around an enemy, the more powerful your homing attack will be on that single enemy. And they'll be spread out amongst multiple enemies, up to 6 in fact, when you are further enough away. And this can kind of overcomplicate it. It really shouldn't be like this. I know they were going for something a little bit different, but I really don't like this change, and it kind of just makes things feel more automated and slows things down if you want to attack multiple enemies at once. And it always feels artificial because when the opportunity presents itself to do a multiple focused homing attack, the enemies are always going to be side by side, so it's just wise to do it, because you might be saying, well, why don't you just do a manual homing attack by itself if you don't want that automated experience of doing a multiple focused homing attack? And that's because it's not a wise idea, because you're going to end up getting hit by an enemy most likely because they're so closely grouped together when the opportunity does present itself to do one of these multiple focused homing attacks. Also, when you're locked onto an enemy, you can perform a flying kick, which is a brand new move in this game, and you can use it to defeat certain enemies that you couldn't use with your homing attack. So I like that you could use different attacks to defeat certain enemies. It gives a little bit more pizzazz to the combat, so there's nothing really to complain about here. It's another move, and the more the merrier. I'm always for switching up Sonic's moveset because there's so many mainstays, and it's always nice to have something new, even if it isn't groundbreaking per se. Another interesting gameplay element added to this game is the parkour system, where Sonic could run along walls. He could also do a wall jump. It's not perfect. It feels a little bit janky. I always found myself falling. It definitely works better in the 2D side-scrolling sections than it does in the 3D sections, where I definitely found it not working that well. I mean, you're not even running up a wall. You're basically just trotting up it. There's no sense of momentum. It just doesn't feel right. There definitely could have been some polish added to this gameplay element, that's for certain. So the parkour system is an interesting idea. It's just half-baked at best. A major feature like this definitely needed more time in development to be fully realized as a worthwhile gameplay feature. That's probably why we didn't see it stick around in the series after this game. And that's a shame, because I think that the parkour system definitely is an interesting gameplay element that just needed more time. But Sonic Team got rid of it. Instead of trying to develop it further and make it better, they just scrapped it entirely in future Sonic games. And I think that was a big mistake, because I think that it's definitely an interesting system. It's just flawed. Even running along walls, it's just not a very reliable system, and it's disappointing, but there was potential here. Something interesting to note is that capsules make a return in this game. Remember at the end of Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles, you would find these capsules and you would break them open and the animals would come popping out that Dr. Eggman had captured? Well, you can find smaller versions throughout the stage and bigger versions at the end of the stages, and by defeating badniks, you will collect animals. And these animals can be used as ways of getting into levels. Now, in the Wii U version of the game, the original version of this game, it was a pain in the ass. It was kind of like the Sun and Moon medals that you would find in Sonic Unleashed. And thankfully they rectified this in the PC because you need a lot less to unlock levels. And thank God for this, because I heard it was a big pain in the ass. There was some crazy counts of animals that you need in the Wii U version, and that has been rectified here in the PC version. And I don't remember coming across a single time when I found myself short on animals, so thankfully that wasn't an issue here. Now, you might have noticed this briefcase in the lower right hand corner of the screen. This is where you can hold on to items that you could use in game. You can collect them on the world map, or by doing certain missions. These can include collecting a certain amount of rings, or just completing certain physical tasks, like not getting damaged in a boss fight, things along those lines. I always forgot that I had these items. You'd be saying, Brad, they're right there on the screen. How could you forget about them? Well, it's real easy. Just don't really think about them. You don't really need the items. It's not necessary. It's not like this is such a hard game, like, oh god, I need items. It's nice to have them. This is an interesting idea, much akin to something like in Super Mario World, where you can drop the item from the top of the screen from that box. It's a nice idea, but it's not really necessary. It just seems like an extra thing to tack on. Also, along for the ride, mysteriously, are the Wisps from Sonic Colors. What are these guys doing here since they went back to their planet at the end of Sonic Colors? I have no idea. There's some new Wisps here, like the Black Bomb Wisp and the Music Note Wisp, and some of the returning ones like the Hover and Lightning Wisp. You know, I don't know what these are doing here, and it's very rare that they're used in interesting ways. This just seems like a waste. It's like, here's the return of the Wisps, guys, and that's about it. Like, it's just another tacked on thing. I don't know why it's here, why it needs to be here, just like the item briefcase. It's just something that is tacked on, and it's an extra thing, and, well, it's nice, but you're not really doing anything interesting with it. I'd rather just do the regular Sonic gameplay instead of using the Wisps, to be quite honest, if they're not going to be used well. I like them in Sonic Colors, but here, not so much. Anyway, this story is a bust. So, Eggman at one point fakes his own death, he comes back, and we have probably one of the most anticlimactic final bosses in Sonic history. Well, that might go to Sonic CD, quite frankly, but this one is a real bust. I mean, this is really a horrible fucking final boss. You want to talk about generic? There's nothing special about this boss fight at all. I mean, you would think that this is just probably just a normal Eggman boss fight that could have been put at the end of any stage. I mean, really? What were they thinking here? This is it? Like, you feel like the game is finished after this fight? The boss fight against Zavik feels even more climactic than this, because at least he grows big, but that's not the final boss. Eggman is. I just think that it's a little bit disheartening to end a game that's already less than stellar on this note. And there's one big point in the story that's kind of awesome, but then turns to be complete trash. That's when the Deadly Six tries to roboticize Tails, but Tails manages to stop the robotization process before it could take effect. And he's not going to fight Sonic. He's not evil, he's not bad, he just pretends to be, to keep up appearances when he's around the Deadly Six before Sonic shows up. And there it goes. You could have had a boss fight against a roboticized Tails. It would have been awesome. It would have been memorable. But they just throw that shit out the fucking window. That would have been like a boss fight. That would have been a scene that we would have remembered for years to come in Sonic games, instead of it just being relegated to a big nothing burger or a big nothing chili dog. I'm sorry. You know, that was something that could have been so fucking cool. You know, they roboticized Princess Sally back in the old Archie comics, and it would have been awesome to see it done to Tails in a video game, or to any Sonic character for that matter. But fuck no, they're not doing it here. It's just a little tiny plot device that goes nowhere. It is just really very, very disappointing, and an already disappointing Sonic game that really does nothing at the end of the day. You know, you play this game, you get a little bit of entertainment, but that's all you really get. There's a few good things here and there, and it's really a decent game at the end of the day. Don't let anybody tell you this is a horrible Sonic game, a bad Sonic game. It's not bad, it's not horrible, but it's just not very good. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a game being average or, you know, slightly above average or okay. I mean, is it worth playing? Yeah, if you're already a Sonic fan, of course. If you're not already a Sonic fan, then fuck no. I wouldn't say to play this one at all. It's not going to change your mind when it comes to Sonic games. It's not going to revolutionize the way you see Sonic, so I would say no, just ignore this one. But Sonic fans, give it a try. There's some interesting sights. There's some interesting sounds. Well, the music is not really that great in this game. Really, I looked at my Sonic playlist on my phone, and I only had 3 tracks. My favorite track is definitely Sea Bottom Segway. This one is a relaxing tune, and I absolutely love it. There's something about grinding the rails and listening to this tune that really puts me at peace. So after you defeat the disappointing final boss of the game, at least you get the hidden world, which is consisting of 4 zones, and 2 of them are pretty good. I like Zone 2, where you control the tornado. This is actually really well done, and I enjoy this, and it also has a little bit of difficulty to it, which I enjoy. And Zone 4 has Sonic running from a giant Baku Baku. This thing is actually pretty terrifying, and I really enjoyed this one. It's a great way to cap off the hidden zones. And they were nice enough in the Steam version to include the Nights into Dreams level that was DLC for the Wii U. And this is visual splendor. I absolutely love this stage. It's beautiful to look at and to play through. It's a lot of fun. So this is a nice little bonus. Also, you could download a mod where you can play through the Legend of Zelda and Yoshi's Island DLC. And those are definitely worth a look, I would say. They're nice little tributes, and they're fun to play through. Nothing mind-blowing, but I think they're definitely worth your time. It's also very charming seeing Sonic run around in Link's tunic. I really did get a kick out of that. So, guys, there you have it. You know, not such a great Sonic game, but not a very bad Sonic game either. That's very exaggerated when the fans say that, just like they always pretty much exaggerate when it comes to Sonic games. So guys, if you enjoyed the video and you're not already subscribed, please do so, and click the bell, and hit the thumbs up if you liked it. Hit the thumbs down if you fucking hated it. If you want to donate to my Patreon, I would greatly appreciate it. And guys, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.